Hey, this is Lorena and I wanted to do a tutorial for you guys. I wanted to do a video on how I float my quilts on the Longarm. I have a client's quilt that I need to get done and I thought this would be a good time to show you how I put a quilt on my Longarm. There is a tendency to put leaders on the back fabric and also on the quilt top itself. You put a leader, that's how initially I was taught, but I found that as I was rolling the quilt that the top fabric sometimes went wonky and it's sometimes really hard to control. So I also want to share with you how I numbered my leaders and how I kind of set up on putting the back fabric. I float my quilts for this reason. One, you don't have to sew a leader on the quilt top because, you know, I want everything done yesterday. Another reason I do it is as you roll the quilt, it's easier to control the quilt top and the batting. Also, when you have the quilt top sewn to a leader, I hope this doesn't confuse you. It's hard to make sure that the back fabric doesn't have any pleats and that the batting doesn't have any folds, and that's why I float my quilt top. So I'll show you what I mean by floating the quilt top, and I really do hope you like this video. I am going to show you the process of how I organize myself when I'm getting everything going, and I know there's several videos out there, but I thought maybe it would be good for me to show you how I do it. Alright, so I really do hope you like this quick little informative video on how you put your fabric on the Longarm. Alright, I'll talk to you in a second, okay? Bye! I also wanted to share with you that I have numbered all my leaders. And what I did is I got a measuring tape, and from this end, these two ends right here, I measured 1 inch to 5, and then as I went on the leader, this is my top leader and my back leader. Either way, I did this with all the leaders, okay? And then I went and I numbered 5 inches, then 10, then 15, then 20, and then 25, as you can see, and I went all the way down and I marked every 5 inches on my leaders. And the reason I did this is so that when you are sewing on your back fabric or any type of fabric, your top fabric, if you like sewing on leaders on the top fabric, you can start anywhere and you know that the measurements are all the same. So I can literally start sewing the back fabric on number 5 if I wanted to, or if it's a smaller quilt, I can sew my top fabric on 35 if I wanted to, or if I wanted to put the quilt somewhere in the center or move it over wherever I wanted to, I could literally start sewing on the 35 on the back on one side of the back fabric and sew on 35 on the other side of the fabric. And this keeps me a little bit more mindful. If you do sew your top fabric to a leader, this is also very helpful because you can, if you're sewing your back fabric on 15, you can literally come in 6 inches, which would be here, and then sew your top fabric, because you should have like 5 inches, give or take, on the back fabric extra on every side, the right and left and top and bottom. On the top fabric, you could go in 5 inches and sew on the other leader that are measured exactly the same, and you know that your top fabric will fit perfectly on that leader if you sew your top fabric to a leader. Okay, so this is something I've done. They didn't come this way. I did this for myself. I marked it with the pen, and I made sure that I laid all the leaders consecutive, like together, to make sure that they are pretty much all marked the same. So I have also another set of 4 leaders, and they are marked exactly the same, and I measured them the same to make sure that every alignment was exactly the same, and that, you know, 5 wasn't over here on another leader. Okay? Okay, so I went ahead and I trimmed off the whole quilt. I need to make sure that the back fabric, one of the sides or both sides, the top side and the bottom side that I'm going to put the leader on, are completely straight, because you're going to sew it on and you don't want it so wonky. So this is one of the back fabrics, and I decided that I wanted to sew the fabric in this direction. So I get my leader. This leader has a number 5 right there. I tend to sew, you could see where I sew a lot right here on the 5. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin Yeah, I hope you see this. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin where it lines up to the 5. And I'm just going to pin it maybe twice. That's all you have to do. It's really just to organize my thoughts. So this is where the 5 starts. Then I'm going to get the bottom end of this fabric. Hopefully my lighting is okay. Get the bottom end of this fabric. And I hope you can see what I'm doing. And here's the other leader. And of course, since I did 5 on this side, 5 on this side, on the same side, I'm going to pin 5 on the bottom leader. Here's my number 5, and I'm going to pin this fabric I'm going to show you how I have it. To this number 5. And then I'm going to go ahead and base stitch it. I'm not going to stitch it like normal stitching. You're going to base stitch it, okay? So we're going to the sewing machine in a minute. So I have all my fabric to my left side. I have a puddle of fabric right here, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead. I already have it pinned, and I know that this is right. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. I'm going to set my machine to basting, which on the Juki is number 6. Then backwards and forwards. I like tacking this area down really well. And then make sure your fabric is lined up to your leader. You see me coming to the end, and I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way to the end. Go forward and backwards, and I'm done. And this is why you wanted your back fabric completely straight, because you lined it up to your leader completely straight. And I just sewed a 4th base stitch. This is what it's going to look like. Okay? Then you're going to do the opposite side. So this is the leader I've sewn. Just you can see that right there. And then I grab the other fabric. And this is what I've pinned. I know it's exactly 5 and 5. 5 and 5. Then I'm going to kind of flip the fabric over on the left side. And it doesn't matter. You can literally put the leader on this side or this side. It doesn't really matter. And then I have it pinned. I pin it just for placement, because when sometimes I can get confused and put the leader on the wrong side. You know, I've put the leader on the wrong side before. It's horrible. Then you have to unbaste it. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this leader completely on. Okay, so one of the reasons why I love sewing on the leaders, it doesn't really take that much, maybe 5 minutes from pinning to sewing or basting the leader on the back fabric. I also wanted to share another thing. When I got my Longarm quilting machine, I had enough leaders to put on 2 quilts, and that's with me sewing the leaders on the back fabric and a leader on the quilt top itself. But because I do not put a leader on the quilt top, I have a tendency now to have an extra 2 pair of leaders that I could sew on back fabric. What I like about that is when I have a couple quilts, I'll sew all the back fabrics of 3 quilts, because that's what I have. And then when I finish quilting one, it's really quick and easy to exchange or interchange the next quilt, because I already have the leader sewn on. I don't like pinning. I talked about that before. My friend loves to pin. She likes sitting in front of her TV and pinning. I don't like it because there's a tendency that you get these weird puckerings when you pin, and you have to make sure the pins are back to back. Another reason is I don't like getting poked with pins. And I really like the way when you baste a leader on a back fabric, it's really nice and flat, and it has really great stability if you go backwards and forwards on each end where you start and when you finish. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's like when I put it on the machine, okay? So let's go to the machine. And this is what I mean by float. It just kind of, let me put it down, floats. It just hangs down. and I just float it. I tend to give myself 3 to 4 inches. I need to tighten it. Do you see how it just hangs there? It puddles, and that's what floating the quilt top is. Okay, so that's floating the quilt. Where this is completely, I don't know if you could see it, free. The quilt top is completely free from the long arm. I have these magnets that have doorknobs, and what I do, the way I stabilize the fabric, which if I had a leader on the bottom of the quilt top, you would tighten it on the leader bar, right? But I have magnets like this with doorknobs on them, and it's one of my tips, and I have like 2 of them. Before, I used to pin and make sure that it was pinned well, and I want to also make sure that the quilt is straight. That lock in and keep the top fabric pretty taut. And it keeps everything pretty straight.